My younger brother had been traveling for 6 hours and had barely picked up a chicken drumstick when my mother-in-law slapped him across the mouth in front of my husband. "You greedy little pig. Nobody comes here to eat for free." Didn't argue. I simply closed the door, picked up the laptop he had forgotten, and found a $150,000 transfer that would change our family forever. In this house, freeloaders wait until they're given permission to eat. Lydia's voice shattered the dinner just as my 8-year-old brother, Wyatt, lifted a marinated chicken drumstick toward his mouth. Before he could react, my mother-in-law jumped to her feet and slapped him across the face so hard that he dropped his fork. For a moment, nobody breathed. Wyatt had arrived that afternoon in Phoenix from a small town in Wyoming to start college. He carried a patched backpack, a bag of avocados my father had picked, and a jar of homemade salsa my mother had prepared for me. I had been looking forward to his visit for weeks. I had cooked red rice, charro beans, and chicken because I knew that after 7 hours on a bus, he would be starving. But Lydia welcomed him by, staring at his sneakers as though he had eked mud into a palace. "This isn't the countryside," she said. "Try not to break anything." My husband, Javier, heard the remark and said nothing. He settled into the seat at the head of the table, asked for a beer, and acted as if he paid for everything in the apartment, even though the property was in my name and every expense came from my cosmetics business. Wyatt barely touched his food. Wanting to encourage him, Elle served him the biggest drumstick. "Lydia says lamb," her hand on the table. "That piece was for my son. Javier works all day." The truth was that Javier contributed very little toward groceries and always claimed his salary disappeared into client meetings. Even so, I lowered my voice to avoid another argument. "Wyatt is our guest, Lydia. Let him eat." Embarrassed, my brother tried to pass the drumstick to Javier. It slipped from his hand and stained the white tablecloth. That was when the slap came. Oops. "Uncivilized country boy," Lydia shouted. "You come here expecting your sister to support you, and now you're ruining my things." I looked at the red mark spreading across Wyatt's cheek. Then I looked at Javier, waiting for him to defend my brother. "Mom went too far," he muttered, "but Wyatt also needs to learn some manners. Naomi, clean this up and serve us again." 4 years of humiliation snapped inside me. I grabbed the edge of the table and flipped it over. Plates exploded across the floor. Soup ran beneath the chairs, and the chicken landed at Lydia's high heels. "I paid for this meal. I paid for this table, and I paid for the apartment where you're insulting my family. Both of you are leaving right now." Javier turned pale. "I'm your husband. You can't throw me out of my own house. The deed says otherwise. Tomorrow I'll be filing for divorce." Lydia started screaming that I was out of control. Javier grabbed her by the arm, and before they walked out, he glared at me. "You're going to regret this. Without me, you're nothing." I closed the door and hugged Wyatt until he stopped shaking. Then I noticed Javier's briefcase on the couch. His laptop was still open, and a notification appeared on the screen. "My love, did she sign the mortgage yet?" I couldn't believe what I was about to discover. The message lingered on the screen, bright and mocking. My breath caught in my throat. I clicked on the notification and opened the full email thread beneath it. There, neatly laid out, were documents concerning the refinancing of my personal apartment, a property I had purchased long before I ever met Javier. He had been pressuring me for months to add his name to the title so he could build joint credit. I had stalled, refusing to do it, but the emails revealed a terrifying reality. Javier had drafted a fraudulent power of attorney using a notary public acquaintance, forging my signature to transfer the title into a joint LLC owned by him and his mother. And that wasn't all. I scrolled through his open browser tabs and found his banking portal. A pending wire transfer caught my eye. The amount was for $150,000, directed from my business operating account to an offshore bank account in the Cayman Islands under Lydia's name. The transfer had been authorized just an hour before they arrived for dinner. Wyatt wiped his eyes with the back of his sleeve, watching me closely. "Naomi? What is that?" "Nothing that you need to worry about right now," I said. forcing my voice to remain steady. Though my hands were trembling, "Wyatt, listen to me. I need you to do something very important. Can you take your laptop, go down to the lobby, and wait for me in the car?" "Are you okay?" he asked, looking at the mess on the dining room floor and the open laptop. "I am more than okay. I am about to take our lives back. Go on now. I'll be down in 10 minutes. Once the door clicked shut behind him, I sat at the dining room table amidst the scattered shards of ceramic and spilled beans and got to work. Javier had always underestimated me. He thought I was just a quiet woman who ran a successful skincare line out of a spare bedroom. Someone he could bully and manipulate while he played the big corporate executive. He didn't understand the logistics of my business, nor did he realize that as the founder and sole owner, one maintained dual authentication, security protocols that required my physical phone and biometric approval for any movement over $10,000. He thought the $150,000 transfer had gone through, but because my phone was sitting right beside me, the final two-factor authorization notification had been sitting ignored on my lock screen the entire evening. I tapped reject. Instantly, the transaction was canceled, and a security freeze was placed on the business account. Next, I downloaded every single email, bank statement, and forged document from his laptop and forwarded them directly to my personal encrypted cloud storage, as well as to my attorney, Marcus Vance. Marcus was a fierce litigator who specialized in high-asset divorces, and I knew he would love nothing more than to tear Javier and his mother apart. Finally, I accessed Javier's company, emailed and drafted a formal notification to his HR department, attaching proof of the corporate embezzlement he had been running through fake client expense accounts for the past year, a scheme I had suspected, but never had proof of until tonight. I shut the laptop, packed it into its leather case, and walked out of the apartment, locking the deadbolt behind me. I never wanted to set foot in that room again. The following morning, the sun broke harshly over the Phoenix skyline. Wyatt and I were sitting in a quiet diner 3 blocks from my old apartment, nursing black coffee and plates of huevos rancheros. Wyatt had eaten 3 plates already, his color returning as the trauma of the previous night faded into the background. "So," Wyatt said, cutting into a tortilla, "you're really divorcing him?" "Before noon today," I replied, checking my phone. My phone buzzed. It was Marcus Vance, my attorney. "Naomi," Marcus said without preamble. I received the files. "Good Lord, woman! Your husband isn't just a parasite. He's a criminal. We have enough here to freeze every asset he owns, throw out his fraudulent deed attempts, and ensure he leaves this marriage with nothing more than the clothes on his back." "Can we lock him out of the apartment permanently?" asked. "Done. A judge signed an emergency protective and property exclusivity order an hour ago based on the financial fraud and physical intimidation toward your brother. The locks have already been changed. Thank you, Marcus. Let's move forward with everything." As I hung up, the bell above the diner door jingled. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The sharp scent of designer cologne and heavy footsteps heralded Javier's arrival, closely followed by the sound of Lydia's clicking heels. They looked disheveled. Javier's suit jacket was unbuttoned, and dark circles bruised the skin beneath his eyes. They spotted us in the corner booth. Javier marched over, his face flushed with rage, while Lydia hung back slightly, arms crossed like an inspecting general. "Naomi," Javier hissed, slamming his hands onto our table, making our coffee cups rattle. "What the hell did you do? The doorman wouldn't let me into the building. My company email is locked, and my bank accounts are showing red flags." Wyatt stiffened, dropping his fork, but I raised a hand to calm him. I took a slow sip of my coffee, looked up at my husband of 3 years, and smiled. "Good morning, Javier. I see you found out. You locked me out of my home?" he yelled, drawing the attention of everyone in the diner. "You ungrateful bitch! Without me, you're just a small-town girl selling lotions online? You are nothing." Mom was right about you from day one. Lydia stepped forward, her chin held high. You disgraceful creature. Striking out at your husband, throwing us out into the street, and now throwing a tantrum like a child. You will hand over the keys to the apartment immediately. Apologize to my son and sign the transfer documents, or we will ruin you. I couldn't help it. I laughed. It was a clear, ringing sound that echoed off the diner's retro walls. Ruin me? I asked, sliding my phone across the table so that the screen faced them. Displayed brightly on the screen was a PDF copy of the emergency asset freeze, alongside screenshots of the fraudulent power of attorney and the email trail with his mistress, plotting to steal my property. Javier's face drained of color. The bluster vanished from his eyes in an instant, replaced by sheer, unadulterated panic. He snatched the phone off the table, his eyes darting across the legal text. This is a mistake, he stammered, his voice cracking. Naomi, honey, listen to me. That email, that was just a joke, a misunderstanding. A friend of mine, we were just venting. And the 150,000 United States dollars. Wire transfer to an offshore account in your mother's name? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Was that a joke too? Because my business bank and the federal authorities might take a very different view of corporate embezzlement. Lydia gasped, stepping forward to peer at the screen. You can't prove anything. My son is a respected man. You're a liar. Actually, Lydia, Marcus Vance has all the proof he needs, said calmly. Standing up from the booth, I smoothed down my blazer and looked down at Javier, who looked smaller than he ever had. The apartment is mine. The business is mine. Your corporate job is gone, Javier, and by the end of the week, you'll be facing criminal charges for forgery and wire fraud. Javier grabbed my wrist, his fingers digging in desperately. Naomi, please, don't do this. We can work it out. I love you. Before he could finish, Wyatt stood up from the booth. Though he was only 18, growing up on a rugged ranch in Wyoming had given him broad shoulders and quiet strength. He stepped between us and gripped Javier's arm, forcing him to release my wrist. In this house and anywhere near my sister, you don't get to touch her, Wyatt said quietly, his voice carrying an icy edge that made Javier step back. We didn't look back as we walked out of the diner into the warm Arizona morning. 3 months later, the dust had finally settled. The divorce was granted on grounds of fraud and financial misconduct. Javier didn't contest a single clause. He couldn't afford to. Stripped of his job, facing a pending criminal investigation for embezzlement, and abandoned by the very circle of high society friends he had spent years trying to impress, he moved back in with Lydia in a modest suburban rental across town. The apartment was entirely mine again, quiet and peaceful, untainted by their toxic presence. On a bright Saturday afternoon, Wyatt and I were in the kitchen. The scent of roasted chicken, red rice, and homemade salsa filled the air. This time, there was no tension, no fear, and no walking on eggshells. Wyatt, now settled into his college classes and thriving in his computer science program, was setting the table with sturdy porcelain, plates that didn't have to be hidden away or treated like museum pieces. More charro beans? I asked, stirring the pot on the stove. Always, Wyatt grinned, leaning against the counter. Hey, Naomi. Here. Do you ever miss any of it? The fancy dinners, the high society. I looked around the bright, sunlit kitchen. My business was expanding faster than ever. My name was secure, and my family was safe. I smiled, walking over to hand him the biggest chicken drumstick on the platter. Not for a single second, I said. Eat up. You're home.